Hey guys, it's Marco again, with the last guide for this SoD phase. It's time for some rogue tanking. Currently there are 2 viable builds, and there are 2 viable buttons on your screen as well. The like and subscribe button, so smash those for maximum DPS. One tank build is superior for the raid, and the other for dungeons. Again, as a disclaimer, this is all my opinion, and if you have any remarks, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will start with the different talent options and then I will show you how to play as a rogue tank, so let's get into it. First and best raid talents are normal saber/slash talents. You take 14 points in assassination with 5% critical strike chance, 45% increased slice and dice duration, 2% increased damage and 60% chance to generate a combo point after a finisher. Last point goes into relentless strikes for the much needed energy regeneration. In combat tree, we only take 2 points into improved sinister strike. And for runes, you will be running just a flesh wound, saber slash and blade dance. These talents are the best since they offer by far the best damage output on bosses and damage translates into aggro, which is an important factor in tanking. I wouldn't recommend running these talents if you're below 900 HP unbuffed. At that amount of HP, I would say that more tankiness is required compared to raw DPS. Second talent option is the more tankier approach, which is also better when there is multiple mobs, since you have a cheap way of doing quite a decent amount of damage with riposte and maintaining your aggro. Main goal of these talents is to grab riposte, so you'll definitely take 2 points into improved sinister strike, 3 points in lightning reflexes for the dodge percentage, 5 points into deflection for 5% parry chance. I would always put at least 3 points into precision for 3% hit, which leaves us at 2 remaining points. With the last 2 points, you can make a choice. You can invest them all in hit percentage, which results in more damage, or you will invest 1 or 2 points in endurance for the lower evasion and sprint cooldown. Evasion is a super strong tanking cooldown, and having it on a 3.5 minute cooldown isn't a small thing. Your runes will be the same in both builds, so just a flesh wound, saber slash and blade dance. We have one cool but underwhelming rune in main gauge. This rune will increase your survivability on a cooldown, but it will definitely cost you way too much aggro, since saber slash does a ton of damage with its bleed. That's why I don't recommend taking this rune at the moment. In my mind, the best way to improve this underwhelming rune is to let it extend the duration of your blade dance. This way it's technically a DPS ability, since you're saving common points for damage instead of blade dance, which heavily increases your tankiness. But that's just my visual thinking, I'm not a game developer. If you have any cool ideas to improve this rune, share them in the comments, I would gladly hear them. With talents behind us, we have 2 different approaches to boss fights. You can play a boss fight as a normal DPS rogue without casting blade dance, and a more tankier approach with blade dance and 20% reduced physical damage. With gear and decent raid team, DPS approach is much better. Since you will hold aggro much easier, bosses will die sooner and healers should still have an easy time healing you. However, if you have bad healers or you're undergeared, proper tank approach will make you a lot more tankier, but your DPS and aggro will suffer. It's also important to note that blade dance only reduces physical damage, so if you're facing a boss which mostly does magical damage, it's not worth casting the ability. Since you have 2 different approaches to bosses, you have 2 different sets of rotations. If you aren't casting blade dance and have DPS talents, your rotation is as if you're just a DPS, and I already covered that rotation in my other guide, so you can check it out there. As for tank talents, your rotation will be a bit different. You will just be spamming saber slash until 3 stacks of it. Then you will start weaving in some sinister strikes before refreshing saber slash bleed. You will use your combo points mainly on rupture, since you don't have improved slice and dice. And if your rupture is still running when you get to 5 combo points, you can either wait for rupture to expire or do a slice and dice. When you parry an attack, instantly try to use riposte, so you send it on cooldown. Riposte is a nice damage output and it has a relatively small cooldown, so it's a must use. Your rotation changes just a bit when you're going for blade dance. You start the fight with saber slash into blade dance. Then you're filling your combos and using your combos to maintain as much uptime on your blade dance. If your blade dance is still up and you have 5 combo points, you will dump them into slice and dice if you have improved slice and dice, or rupture if you don't. If the boss isn't currently hitting you, you want to spend your combo points on doing damage. And if you have to taunt the boss, you can just use blade dance at any amount of combo points and continue normally. When it comes to multiple mobs, you don't have much of a rotation, your goal is to keep aggro. That's why you will just use Saber Slash into Blade Dance on the first target, then hit the next target with Saber Slash and maybe taunt the third target. Tanking multiple mobs as a rogue is kind of impossible since we have no AoE capabilities, so you're bound to lose mob aggro. In those moments, just take it easy, keep as many mobs as you can on yourself and don't turn your back on the mobs. Tanking multiple mobs is the biggest flaw of tank rogues. Thankfully, there aren't any bosses which abuse this weakness. Another weakness is the fact that we have no ways to off-heal or remove magical effects like paladins. We don't offer Sunder armor as warriors do. We have expose armor, but it's not as good as Sunder armor, and it's super hard to manage it together with Blade Dance. We have nothing to protect us against spells. But our strengths are good, we do huge amount of damage as tanks, and we literally have no aggro issues on solo targets. It's impossible to take our aggro unless someone uses taunt, which is super good. We're also super annoying to hit thanks to our high dodge and parry chance, and we're unkillable when we use our evasion. That's why we make super main or off tanks. If the situation is dicey, we will just use evasion and the boss isn't going to hit us for like 15 seconds, which would be way more than enough time to stabilize the raid. However, I must say that for me, tanking with rogues feels boring, since our gameplay doesn't change almost at all. When it comes to BiS items, tank and Saber Slash rogues currently have the same BiS list. The only difference is the offhand, since we won't apply poisons in BFD, we just want a good stat stick without thinking about the weapon speed. That's why I prefer using Sentinel Blade for agility and stamina. If your rogue is undergeared, you can just buy some of the monkey pieces, which give stamina and agility, together with the Defias rings, and you will be good to tank in BFD raid. So remember, tanking in Classic is a balance of DPS and tank stats. You don't want to be a paper, but you want to do some damage to easily keep your aggro. And with that said, thank you for watching and bye bye.